Good morning guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we have the Mercedes-Benz EQA 250 on review, which is this car behind me right here. Now, obviously the EQA 250 is sort of built on a GLA platform. For those of you who are a bit more familiar, it isn't exactly a ground up EV, but it is kind of the most expensive EV in its segment, the compact premium SUV segment. Now, why is it the most expensive EV in its segment? Let's find out in today's review. So for today's review, we are going to go check out its exterior, walk around the car, jump inside the car, check out its interior, and of course we're going to go take it for a drive. And I'll tell you what I think about the car pertaining it to its use in Singapore. But before we do all that, if you're a driver in Singapore and you're looking for an insurance renewal quote for your vehicle, or looking to sell your car for the best price possible, be sure to check out the link in the description box below, because through that link we'll be able to provide you the best possible quotes for those two services. So please check it out. It's completely free to inquire. If you need them, ask us, we'll help you out. Without any further ado, let's go. Alright, so jumping straight into the review, this is the exterior of the EQA 250. So not much surprise here. I mean, this is a familiar shape, I guess. Obviously without the actual grille. This is a blanked out grille for the EV, for the EQA. So you don't get the standard grille that you get on a GLA, obviously. But you know, enough about the GLA. The EQA 250 is in a sense, it's still a car on its own, because it's got a completely different drivetrain. It's not so it doesn't really share a lot with the GLA other than its architecture. Going into details, generally I think it's quite a smart looking car. It's very demure. I feel like it doesn't look too aggressive. So I think if you're the sort of person that isn't after that whole garang feel, I think this is a good option to have. And speaking about the way it's demure, you've got some nice blue eyelashes here to denote its electric underpinnings. And in terms of the front grille, you've also got the three-pointed star motif that's sort of embedded into the front face. Can't say grille anymore, yeah, because it's not really a grille. In terms of the wheel setup, standard wheel size, this is running on 18-inch wheels as standard. And generally, the ride comfort on these wheels is it's pretty solid. It's pretty exceptional. But of course, if you are a little bit more adventurous with the appearance and you want to upgrade the look of the car, you can of course increase the wheel size to a much larger size. I think the car would look a lot more sporty, but it would also probably compromise driving comfort, so that's completely up to you. Here's how the car looks from the side. Not much surprises here. And then over to the rear, which I think is probably the nicer looking end of the car, because it's got a sort of a light bar at the end, which I think is pretty cool. When the lights are actually on, it forms a sort of a little shape. I can't really leave the car on while I'm not inside because this is an EV. But you can check out pictures of it online if you are really interested, and then see if that tickles your fancy in any way. But other than that, I think the car is a very standard looking car. I don't think it will necessarily turn any heads when you turn up at the office car park, but it definitely looks smart, definitely looks premium, and definitely looks like something that is well put together. Let's check out the boot just for curiosity's sake. I haven't really taken a look. So this is, oh, I got Pokka green tea. I didn't even know there was Pokka green tea. Yeah, so automatic tailgate. Actually, the boot size is pretty decent. I don't think this will fit a golf bag lengthwise, side by side. I haven't actually tried this because I haven't played golf this weekend, unfortunately, so I didn't get a chance to put my golf bag into this car. But in any case, this is, if you don't play golf, I think this is more than enough. You definitely can put two medium-sized suitcases inside. You definitely can do your grocery shopping. Quite a lot of things can be done. So, pretty cool. Let's jump inside the car and check out the interior and see what the EQA has to offer. Alright guys, welcome to the cabin of the EQA 250. So, to start things off, generally, I feel like it's a pretty well built cabin. Everything feels very nicely put together. And when you get in, you immediately get the sense that you are in a Mercedes-Benz because of the styling language. Everything is quite synonymous, and obviously you can't really miss it because all around the car, you know, on a few panels that you can see around the dashboard or around the console, there are these sort of there's the 3-pointed star motif that is printed onto the like for example the door card, the dashboard, and the passenger side door card as well. So very hard to miss that you're in a Mercedes-Benz. And in terms of from a branding standpoint, I think that's pretty cool. The only thing is this 3-pointed star motif has been in play for quite a number of years now. In fact, if I don't recall wrongly, I think it made its first appearance probably around the mid 2010s, like 2015 or something like that. That was around the W213 generation of cars. So depending on how you see it, you can see it as a sort of continuation of that tradition, and it's become a sort of a thing, it becomes a mainstay, which is great. Or some people actually feel like it's been overplayed. I'm not sure what you think. Put your comment in the comment section below. Tell me what you think about the 3-pointed star motif, because some people feel like it's overplayed, it's overdone, that they should stop doing it. Some people feel like it's a great tradition that should carry on for as long as it can. So personally, I don't really have an issue with it. I think it's quite nice actually. I think it looks very, very premium, and although it's not exactly the newest sort of feature or newest thing on the block, it still exudes a lot of premium feels when applied onto the car. I'm going straight into the sorry, I feel like I digress. I always digress, but anyway, okay. In terms of styling, obviously the aircon vents here are still using the round shape aircon vents that you found. Like in fact, most of the cabin feels like a GLA, right? Because it is sort of built onto the GLA platform. My biggest issue with the car is probably the size of the infotainment screens. Not that it's not that the screens aren't good, but the bezels are a little bit thick and the screen itself is a little bit small. And when I say it's a little bit small, I don't mean like it's small, but I think it's small in today's context, meaning I think any other car that you purchase today will likely have an infotainment screen that's probably larger than this, and coming from a car that probably sits at the top of its segment in terms of price. I feel like this could have been done a little bit better, or this could have been updated along with the rest of the car. A larger infotainment unit, maybe one with a slightly smaller bezel, because I think for the longest time, I mean since 204 times, right, people have been talking about how the Mercedes-Benz screens have this extremely thick bezel, and I think that's not something that they have changed, or not something that they've taken into consideration in terms of feedback. So I guess a little bit disappointed there. I think this car would look absolutely gorgeous if these screens were just larger, or maybe just mounted a little bit higher, because they just feel a little bit low and a little bit far from your eye line when you are driving the car. So I do find that I have to peer down quite a bit as compared to most infotainment units, which are a bit larger. You know, you're only glancing towards your left and maybe slightly down, but this one is like fully down. And if I'm being completely honest, from my usual driving position, actually the steering wheel kind of obscures about maybe like 10% of the screen, and I'm not sure whether that annoys you. It doesn't really annoy me actually, but the fact is that it does obscure the last 10% of the screen over here on the right side, so I do have to peer over a little bit more if I want to see what's on this end. Other than that, the digital driver's display, this is a pretty standard one that you find on most Mercedes-Benz cars. You've got the options to select and toggle between the different screen settings and the different screen displays. So for example, if you're not familiar with the cars, I'll show them to you. You just press the home button, and then you get to select between a understated mode, which is basically like a very dialed down, soothing, simple this display. And then you also have the sport mode, which maybe slightly irrelevant on this car. I mean, it's not a slow car, it's quite fast because it's an EV, but I don't think people buy this car because they want to drive it in a sporty manner. And then of course you got classic mode, which personally is my favorite. It's the most familiar for me, so to speak. And then you've got navigation mode as well, which I always joke that this is only for people who always get lost because you can actually pull up your Apple Carplay and Android Auto maps directly onto the infotainment unit here. It's wireless, and then this is actually really not necessary. I mean, you don't need a map right in your face, and in the EQA 250's case, it's also not really in your face because it's actually quite a little bit of a glance down. So yes, so moving back to classic mode. Now, around the rest of the car, let's talk about build quality. So generally, build quality is really not bad. It's quite good. It's not the best in the industry anymore. I'm not sure when the last time a Mercedes-Benz was the best in the industry when it came to build quality. But to illustrate my point, generally panels are very, very well put together. You know, nothing feels flimsy, doors feel very solid. You know, you got this really nice tanky feel to it. So all that is good. But I guess some of the buttons here do feel a little bit plasticky. And while plastic shouldn't be frowned upon because it's used in every single car, I do feel like they could be perhaps coated with a sort of a metal coating, or maybe finished in a slightly different material, like a different finish, so that they're not so plain plastic feeling. And also making that decision to use toggle switches always invites that possibility of the toggle switch feeling a little bit loose, so to speak. But I'm nitpicking here. There's generally not a lot to dislike about the cabin. You get in and you definitely know that you're in a luxury car. So yeah, that's just me nitpicking. But in any case, you know, I think the EQA 250 is a great car for like to own if you are sort of maybe like you're single, or you're like driving just you and your partner, no kids. But it does have 4 doors and it does have 4 seats. So let's jump into the back and see how the car fares when it is carrying passengers in the rear. Let's go. Alright, so jumping into the rear of the EQA, generally speaking, quite a decent amount of space, I must say. There is a sort of comfort SS mode in this car. So this driver's seat, currently the engine or the car is switched off. So this seat is actually in its exit position. So it's a bit further back than what it would normally be when I am driving the car. But in any case, so this is in its furthest back position already, and I still have a decent amount of leg room and a very, very decent amount of headroom. So actually I'm very happy with the headroom aspect of this car, because my torso is a lot longer than my legs. So generally when I sit down, I'm a lot taller than other people, and I'm 175 meters tall. So this is definitely a very, very good amount of headroom for your rear passenger. And legroom as well, actually, to be very frank. If I were to be sitting in this car for a longer journey, I think it would still be quite comfortable. One thing that might not be so comfortable though is that the seats do feel quite low to the ground, quite shallow in a sense. So you will be able to see that there's actually quite a bit of a gap between my thigh and the bottom of the seat cushion, which means I am sort of sitting in a bit of a fetal position. I guess for longer journeys that might feel a little bit tiring, but I don't feel like this is the kind of car that you're gonna be necessarily using on like, it's just not the same demographic, right? The person who buys the EQA 250 probably isn't the guy who's driving to like Penang or something like that. I think this is probably a car that's going to be used within Singapore, within the country, within the city. So I don't think this is going to, you know, be of much consequence to the demographic that's going to be really looking at this car. Another thing that I feel like needs to be here but isn't is probably the rear aircon. So there are no rear aircon vents. The car isn't too large, blowers are strong, so I wouldn't say you're likely to feel warm in the rear of this car, but it is sort of a point of parity, isn't it, in today's context, to have rear aircon vents in the car, because it's like a mark of luxury. My personal take, I think they should have included it, because it definitely loses out to some of its competitors because of the absence of the rear aircon vents. But aside from that, ISOFIX points are here. So if you were to use this car for to carry a child seat with a child, definitely doable. And I think there's more than enough leg room to accommodate those rearward facing child seats as well. So definitely no problem there. Let's jump back into the driver's seat, take the car for a drive, and see how it feels on the road. Let's go. Alright, so back in the driver's seat of the EQA 250, and we are about to go take the car for a drive. But before we take the car for a drive, as usual, let's go through some of the basic specifications on the car. So this particular EQA 250 houses a 70.5 kilowatt hour battery pack, which is a little bit larger than, for example, the BMW X1, and with it comes a increased, or not say increased range, but it has a range of about 569 kilometers on a single charge, and that's of course on paper. In reality, you probably get something closer to 500 or high 400s, depending on how you drive. Generally speaking, I think that's actually quite an efficient setup, because although its battery pack is in fact larger than some of its competitors, its listed range is actually quite a little bit more than its listed competitors. So getting 569 kilometers on a single charge from a car in this segment is actually pretty remarkable. It's not a large battery pack by any means. It's actually quite a compact battery size. In terms of power, the EQA 250 produces about 188 horsepower, 350 plus Newton meters of torque, 358 I think. So that's a pretty powerful car. 0 to 100 is 8.6 seconds. So I think looking at all these specifications, one of the first few things that you think about is of course how efficient and how well-rounded the drivetrain of the EQA 250 is, because you've got a car that is, I mean, to put it quite simply, it's got a decently sized battery pack, not too big, so charging speeds aren't going to take too long. You've got a very good listed range, and of course that remains to be tested, and of course it will vary from user to user, because I think electric cars in general are quite susceptible to driver inputs, meaning, you know, if you're the kind of driver that pushes the car quite a bit, electric range really does suffer, especially if you push it in the wrong way. For example, generally electric cars don't do too well if you drive them above a certain speed. So there is like an ideal cruising speed that helps to optimize the range of the car. And then on the other hand, I think power is also quite well balanced out, in the sense where I think they have resisted the urge to make the EQA 250 more powerful than it already is. In fact, I think the car can actually afford to be less powerful so that it's a bit more competitive with its segment mates in terms of which category of COE it sits in. Because the reality is, although this car sits in the sort of same segment as the iX1, which I feel like it's its closest competitor, the iX1 is in fact a Cat A car, and this is a Cat B car, and with that comes price differences. So obviously the EQA 250 is going to be a little bit more expensive to buy. In fact, it's not just a little bit more expensive, it's about 20 to 30 grand more expensive to purchase outright. Now, does that mean that the car is not worth buying? I wouldn't say so, because I think at least in the Singaporean context, the Mercedes brand and the Mercedes badging. How can I help? Oops. The branding does hold a certain level of esteem or street cred among consumers here in Singapore. So, you know, that three-pointed star logo definitely does have an impact. And it does have that extra oomph and premiumness.
The phone is unavailable. You can now connect your phone.
Okay. Alright, so so I think it really comes down to what sort of consumer you are and what sort of emphasis you place on certain things. The iX1 obviously is a car that, you know, in my previous review, and you can watch that as well, you can just click up here. I think it's a very, very well-rounded car, compact SUV that you can buy in Singapore. I think it's very reasonably spec'd for Singapore's roads because we don't really need a huge ton of power. In fact, I think in the Singapore setting, generally I would prefer to see a car that has a lower amount of power but an increased amount of range, just for greater convenience, right? Because better range means lower downtime in terms of the frequency that you have to visit the charging station. And I think in that sense, the EQA 250 does a great job because generally speaking, the drivetrain is quite efficient and you do get quite a bit of range on this car. However, the car is still quite powerful, so I think that's a big bonus because if you are looking at enjoying that electric drivetrain, that instant torque, that power off the line, then definitely a little bit more torque in the in 300 Newton meters sort of category, which of course the EQA 250 sits in, that provides you quite a lot of enjoyment as compared to, say, a lower powered one. In terms of the way the car moves, I would say that the EQA 250 is reasonably comfortable. I don't think it's the most comfortable car in its segment, but there is this sort of like a classic Mercedes feel to it. I'm not, and when I say classic Mercedes, I use that term loosely as well. Don't shoot me for that, because we're not talking about classic Mercedes-Benzes like old school Mercedes-Benzes. We're talking about the new generation of Mercedes-Benz, but within this new generation of Mercedes-Benz cars, I think that there is a it has quite a aligned feel with the rest of the range. What does that mean? Essentially, it means that, you know, despite, you know, if a consumer were to purchase a EQA 250, which is sort of like the entry-level EV in the whole lineup, I don't feel like you're gonna, like, it doesn't feel that far off in terms of the way the car drives as compared to maybe a slightly more expensive model. Obviously there are differences in terms of the way the car is fitted out. You're gonna feel that in terms of the fittings, the overall luxuriousness of the cabin. You're definitely gonna feel that. And of course in terms of power as well, you do get more power on some of the higher power models. But I'm just talking about the way the car interacts with you, the way the car rolls over the road. There is a feel that, you know, you drive this and you sort of know that you are in a Mercedes-Benz right away. So I think that's more of a good thing than a bad one. So really pleasant driving experience there. And as usual, you know, I think in terms of the car's strengths, this isn't a car that you necessarily want to chuck around corners or you buy to drive very aggressively. It's a very nice run around car in the city. It's got good size, you know, you never ever feel like the car is too large. It's very easy to put into spaces. It's very easy to kind of pull off any overtaking maneuvers and squeeze into tight spaces, which we do a lot of in Singapore. Comfort is very decent, very synonymous with the brand. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, power is also quite positive. If you step on it, it goes. Like, you do get some of that kickback, so that's actually quite fun. Of course, that's when you actually want to use it in that way. Going down to some of the more nitty-gritty details, in terms of recuperation modes, there are two recuperation modes on the car, so just strong and normal. There isn't really a recuperation setting where you can turn off every bit, like zero regen. Like, you can't do that in this car. The lowest setting so far I've been able to find is normal, which does have some sort of a regen braking and simulates a sort of an engine braking kind of feel. So if you're if you're coming from petrol powered car and you're coming into an EV for the first time, I think that's gonna feel quite familiar because you do get some engine pullback. But if you're the kind of person that has been driving EVs for a while and you currently have an EV that allows for zero recuperation, then this might be something to get used to, because personally I like driving without any recuperation. I just feel like the car glides a lot better. I enjoy the way that the car sort of just seems to glide on forever. In the EQA 250, unfortunately, you cannot get that. But that being said, the normal recuperation mode is actually quite reasonably calibrated. It's not crazy strong, so you're not gonna feel any sort of jerkiness or any sort of unpleasantness the same way that I feel about maybe like a Tesla Model 3. I'm not such a fan of the way it drives in the level of recuperation that it offers. I feel like the normal mode in that car is still a little bit too strong. But of course, you know, I have also met people that absolutely love the strong recuperation in EVs, and it sort of allows them to do some form of a one-pedal drive, so to speak. And people like that because, generally speaking, you will use a lot less brakes, so your wear and tear rates are lower. And I guess it's a little bit more relaxing as well, because you're not really shifting your right foot from brake to accelerator and so on and so forth. You are just essentially lifting off from your gas pedal. So that's that. Overall, I think this is a great car to consider if you are maybe like a young family, or if you are married, no kids. I think it's got enough badge appeal. The whole car looks sleek, it looks very, very modern, obviously being an EV. So I think it does exude that sort of persona. Premium, EV, compact. So I think young families or young couples married without kids, or actually even just even if you're a slightly older person, don't want to call anybody old, but if you're a slightly older person, no kids, I think this is a great car to have as well, because you don't want to be lugging too much space around, especially in a place like Singapore where there's a lot of city traffic. So you having a car this size does make quite a lot of sense. Range is good, power is good, and I think in terms of driving, it offers more than enough comfort, at least in this stock setup of stock wheel setup, right? Obviously, if you go and mess around with that, if you upgrade your wheels, then you might change that driving dynamic a little bit more. Now, if I have missed out anything in this review that you would want to know about, please put your questions in the comment section below. I'll be more than happy to answer them when I have the time. And as usual, if you are a driver in Singapore and you're looking for an insurance renewal quote, or you're looking to sell your car for the best price possible, check out the link in the description box below, because through those links, we'll be able to provide you the best possible quotes for both your used car and for insurance renewal. We've got some of the best, most competitive insurance renewal quotes in Singapore, so please check them out. It's free to inquire. And if not, please take care of yourself, stay safe, and we will see you next time. Bye bye.